Chinese drug gangs.
Some old Chinese guy in Chinatown.
The Chinese youth gangs. Chinese people say Chinese teenagers. Yeah, so the Chinese guys, what are the Chinese? The bosses of China, the bosses of China, the bosses of Chinatown. Chinatown, the Chinese mafia. China, the Chinese mindset. China or America?
The Chinese people, Chinese bad guys.
The Chinese mind, the Chinese this, Chinese that, Chinese Jews, Chinatown.
Hating the Chinese people.
Chinatown, the Chinese establishment. These Chinese cock and bullshit Chinese mafia theory.
The Chinese mafia.
The Chinese mafia. It's Chinese! It was invented in China. Chineseness. The Chinese and Chinese.
Chinese wife.
Fighting the Chinese so hard. Thinking about the Chinese all the time. The Chinese mafia. When the Chinese mafia are out there.
Sausage of the Chinese tweets. Chinese.
For Chinatown.
Yeah, that was another Chinatown. Dedicated Chinatown journalist.
Yeah, she seems to be on the China beat.
Anything.
I mean, the China network going on in Chinatown and Chinese restaurants insulting the Chinese. He says, ever wonder why the inside of a Chinese restaurant?
China.
Things Chinese.
Chinese, China with you. No, Chinese.
The Chinese.
Chinese history. Did you know the Chinese?
These Chinese. Chinese champagne. The Chinese eat the head captain. The richest clan in Chinatown. He's gotta be involved with the Chinese mafia. A rich Chinese guy, he's gotta be in the Chinese mafia and the Chinese war in Chinatown. Chinese gunmen, the Chinese material conditions in Chinatown. The underclass in the Chinese American diaspora.
No, just hate the Chinese. Chinese. Just the Chinese.
Chinatown. Mainstream media, yeah. Fake news media.
After the Chinese eat all the Chinese people.
Well, you don't speak Chinese. Why the fuck did I invite you on this fucking episode of the Chinese American Civil Society? The Chinese restaurant. Chinese undercover officer.
Chinese police officer.
We're dealing with the Chinese mafia. Chinese undercover officer. These Chinese guys are
Chinese drivers.
Chinese F1 driver. And
China. The Chinese.
Chinese.
A good Chinaman. Yeah.
A good Chinaman.
Chinese guy. Chinese people not afraid to work hard. Good Chinese men. Good Chinese men. Chinatown. But they are Chinese. China woman.
Chinese. So far, I'm still a virgin.
The Chinese are always involved in something. The entire commerce of Chinatown. Chinese mafia don. Chinese civilians.
Chinese woman. Chinese women.
Chinese the whole fucking way through.
Chinese woman.
Can you tell us if there is such a thing as the Chinese mafia? For persistent discrimination against Chinese. A sinister Charlie Chan image. Of Chinese people. For Chinese mafias, Chinese.
China is because, oh my god, China might overtake us.
Because they invented the concept of a mafia 1,000 years ago. China, and that's how they speak Chinese. The Chinese, Chinatown, the Chinese mafia. What Chinese mafia? Chinese Sino-US relations.
You went to China.
The Chinese and Chinese.
These are my books about China.
All my Chinese books,
so fucking funny.
And
all my Chinese books.
More fucking Mandarin. Chinese women. Chinese.
These are all my books about China.
Here are all my books about China.
Here are all my books about Wales.
The Chinese don't have a word for love.
Numerous Chinese languages spoken in the large nation of China.
The young Chinese guy who meets the old Chinese guy.
Agent of the Chinese, leave the Chinese alone. The racial slurs for Chinese people, the Chinese sympathy.
Xenophobia. Chinese people. The Chinese people.
Chinatown.
Chinese guys.
If not in China, then somewhere in Asia becomes Emperor of China. Oh, it's Thailand they go to, not China, and it may apparently not even be China. Why do you want to go to fucking China? Chinatown.
You got to Chinatown, Jack.
Chinatown for Chinese.
For
Chinese. You know, what did the Chinese ever do for us? Chinese person, Brianna Wu, is totally 100% Chinese.
My granddad had a monopoly on all the eggs in China.
The Chinese built railroads.
Books about China.
Chinese people don't kill themselves.
The Chinese nightclub. You're Chinese. Chinese, obviously.
Well, yeah. By Chinese people. Chinese people don't consider suicide to be honourable.
China. He's clearly not real Chinese. Reaganite China. I've got my copy of Thinking China,
Chinese mafia.
taking down
Maybe-
the Chinese.
maybe-
Bait arrest them for being Chinese.
Yeah, he starts doing random Chinese people in the middle of the street.
Xenophobic. The Chinese
If it's like the
government is
cops are
speaking
literally
to
trying
this
to stop
person. Arrest them now.
Chinese people. Chinese people.
Chinatown,
There's no more Chinese extras left.
the Chinese parade.
Chinese people.
Crack a few Chinese heads, you'll get there
Yeah.
eventually.
Chinese people loved it, and there were actual Chinese people who said this is the most offensive thing we've ever seen.
About China and the Chinese community. Chinese themes. Chinese immigrants. The
Just
Chinese
even-
building the railroads.
It's read
She's
about
got to get it in there
China.
somewhere, yeah.
The Chinese, specifically Chinese, very Chinese, the Chinese Revolution, living in Shanghai, China's communist regime, wholly on location in Shanghai, and would have benefited from the support of China's government. Empress Dowager Cixi, who ruled China in China's history.
He has a fixation on China. Knowledge of China.
Well, that's what happens when you fall in with the Chinese mafia. China.
China invented organised crime 1,000 years ago.
The China
Yeah.
connection.
The China connection. Decker versus the goddamn Chinese.
The Chinese mafia's house.
What the Chinese contributed to America. Well, you know, I did learn from this film what the Chinese brought to America.
Half Chinese, a Chinese person.
In China,
Chinese people.
in communist China, commerce of
Chinese
Chinatown,
drug
Chinese
gangs,
mafia,
Chinese
Chinese civilian towns,
Chinese,
Chinese, the whole fucking wave of town.
Chinese.
The Chinese. Can you tell us if there is such a Chinese people say
Yeah.
Chinese
Yeah,
teenagers?
like-
Yeah, so the Chinese guys, sinister Chinese, bosses of China, bosses of China, bosses of China, Chinatown, Yeah, he starts doing cities because they invent China or America.
Arrest them now.
What Chinese mafia?
China.